The Cartoonerific podcast is sponsored by the Wonderful World of Animation Gallery, home of rare and wonderful fine animation art. Visit their website at wwagallery.com. And for our Cartoonerific listeners, you will receive a special 10% discount off any purchase if you purchase by March 25th, 2024. Just go to wwagallery.com and enter code CARTOON10 for your 10% discount. Once again, this discount is only valid until midnight, March 25th, 2024. Once again, visit wwagallery.com.
The following is a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
Welcome to Cartoon Fun, it's Cartoonerific, yeah! It's Cartoonerific, Cartoonerific, it's Cartoonerific, with your host Brian Mitchell.
Well, welcome to the Cartoonerific podcast, Classic Animated Cartoons. I am Brian Mitchell, and I am the host of the show. You know, last week on the old podcast, we had on John Over, and John Over started at Warner Brothers, working on Animaniacs, Tiny Toon Adventures first, and Animaniacs, and then working his way into from layout to storyboard, and then ended up helping develop Disney's One Saturday Morning for ABC, and then later on was producer and director of Clifford the Big Red Dog for PBS, and Jakers, The Adventures of Piggley Winks, two very successful shows on PBS, and he was producer-director of those shows. The one theme that keeps coming up over these podcasts is when you're creative, you're not just creative in one way. I've found many animators to be also musically inclined, or they have other interests, whether it's painting or puppetry or lots of different things. And there are people in this industry that have dabbled in many, many creative areas. So you're not just creative one way, you're creative in a lot of different ways. And I have to say John Over is one of those guys. He is creative in a lot of different ways. His mind goes in all different directions. He's a real smart guy, and I'm glad to call him a friend. But anyway, part 2 is coming up with John Over. The first part was fun. I think the second part is also equally as fun, so please stay tuned for that. We'll be right back after this.
Cartoonerific is the place to be to celebrate hand-drawn animated cartoons. The Cartoonerific podcast features interviews with the magic makers behind your favorite animated cartoons, with episodes uploaded every Friday. Or visit the Cartoonerific blog featuring articles about classic cartoon animation. At the Cartoonerific Gallery, view original animation art and memorabilia from your favorite animated films and TV shows. The company store features exclusive swag from the Cartoonerific universe. And coming soon, brand new world premiere cartoons on the Cartoonerific channel. It's all here. Join the fun at www.cartoonerific.com. That's cartoon, ERIFIC.com. It's Cartoonerific, saving the universe one funny cartoon at a time. And now it's time for our special Cartoonerific guest.
Well, let's get right to it, shall we? Here is part 2 of the John Over interview. Sit back and enjoy.
Ended up having a lot of great time at Warner's. One great thing at Warner's was, it's like when I first got there, Steven Spielberg had this problem with a couple of, he had this idea, and I thought it was great. It was, we're going to take, kids send scripts into the show all the time. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, they never looked at them because they could be sued and all sorts of stuff. But this one script came in, and he thought, I think this might be a fun thing to do, to actually produce the script the kids write.
Right. I remember that.
He picked a script that these kids wrote, 3 girls, And he said, let's do a 2020 special. Let's have them come out to Hollywood. I'll personally give them a tour of Hollywood. They'll take a tour of the studios, and then I'll present them with this episode where they had done it.
Right.
So it turns out it kind of backfired because he called Gene McCurdy's office, the president, and said, "Oh, this is going horrible. I got this film crew with me, and these girls are just." They weren't reacting like, wow, look at that. And whoa, this is, because Spielberg was at the height of his influence at that point.
Right.
And they just weren't impressed with anything. Everything was about, so that's all you got. And at the press conference, I guess Spielberg says, well, we usually don't we don't read scripts come in. My crack lawyers don't allow that. And then one of the girls yells out, yeah, well, your lawyers are on crack, Steve.
Oh my God.
This is bad.
Wow.
So he called the studio and he said, have somebody do caricatures of these girls. And he sent over their pictures and he said, the only thing that will turn them back into girls is seeing themselves.
Yeah.
And so a bunch of us, again, did drawings, and then they selected mine. And the next thing I know, here comes this 2020 camera crew, and here comes Steven Spielberg into my cubicle, and we're showing the girls these drawings. And it worked like a charm. They just turned into these they weren't so, full of themselves. They were suddenly like, laughing and talking like real kids.
Right.
And it worked.
Wow.
And he got all the footage he needed, and it was, I thought, a brilliant testimony to his ability to work with kids.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And then it was fun at Warner's because there was all these opportunities. Animation was kind of taken off.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember like a Chinese film crew came in.
Yeah.
And they were interviewing me and you and a bunch of people. And you always had this funny thing where you were always going, John's hair, it's a toupee. It's a Hollywood toupee. And they go, oh no, Hollywood toupee. And they like film my head. And it was hilarious. It's hilarious. You did a lot of hilarious jokes. I have a whole bin in my garage that is just your stuff.
I'm glad you have it in a place of honor, John.
I do.
I have it out in a trash can in the back, and I'm going to throw it out one day, but I gotta keep them. I got
it spread along the railroad tracks. In such an honorary way. Yeah, no, but a lot of them I wouldn't want my kids to find because they're obscene, but they're hilarious.
Oh, I never did anything. I'm denying that one.
Oh, they were very funny. And that's another thing that those Warner's years had that is so different now is that some directors, I won't name any names, but they would have a whiteboard in their office, and everybody would just draw different people in the studio having sex on this whiteboard.
Oh my
God. It was hilarious. That was like just hilarious. These madcap, crazy drawings of all this stuff going on, all these people coming in and out of the room. It was just everybody'd add to it in some funny way, and no one ever took offense.
Until
it was something both men and women participated in. And then one of the big participants in it, a woman who used to paint these things, she ended up suing.
Yeah, I remember that.
It changed the whole culture of the studio forever. It suddenly, and there's a funny moment there. I don't know if you've had this on your show, but
no, no, not yet.
Can I tell the Paul Trindall Godzilla?
Yeah, here's the world premiere story of it's Godzilla and Paul Trindall.
And it should be Paul that tells this story, but I'll just make it quick. There was a brilliant director, Alfred Gimeno, that could capture the likeness of anybody so quickly and so honestly. And so he was hilarious. He would do these drawings of Paul and exploit his love for Godzilla. This guy was a USC grad that loved Godzilla movies, and he always caught hell for it.
Wow.
And Paul and Alfred would draw these drawings of him in various compromising positions with Godzilla. And they were just hilarious. They were foul, but they were hilarious and so kind of honest in some weird way. And so Paul had these canvassed all around his cubicle. I mean, you couldn't avoid them. They were everywhere, and they were just hilarious. And when all this came down, there was a day that these lawyers came in and summoned Paul, and they said to him, "We hear that you have some Godzilla drawings." They says, "Yes, I do. I have some in my cubicle now. Would you like me to get them?" And they said, "Yes, we'd like to see these drawings." So he's called up to the conference room where it's this big long table, all these lawyers around the table,
right,
in their suits and their coffees, and then he lays down these drawings of just nudity and sexuality that had gone amok with Godzilla and him.
Monster bestiality.
Yes, horrible stuff. But he lays them all out. He goes, "All right, here's the drawing." So he lays them out, and then they start laughing. And then they catch themselves like, "We can't laugh at this. We're here to prosecute this." So they're laughing at it, and they go, "Oh, well, okay, all right, enough of this. This is terrible." Thank you, Paul. You can leave the room now.
Anything happened from that?
Yeah, I mean, people were seriously. There's a couple artists that were seriously reprimanded,
wow,
and kind of villainized for that, and then that just went away, and that was fun. Some of the fun of those cartoons,
mm-hmm.
And it's a difference from Disney, is that we all had open cubicles, and you were always like, people were always floating jokes and drawings and stuff into the next guy's, cubicle. I remember stuff I got from Al Ziegler that was just hilarious.
Right.
There was a steady flow of Post-its coming over the wall.
Sure.
That was just hilarious. And you'd take that humor and you'd put it in your work. That sort of experimental sense was there.
Well, it's a vibe. It's a vibe that's going on through the studio, and you're basically you're testing out the humor of different things, and you do work it into the shows.
Yeah, and it gives you, it's like a looseness. They talk about on set. Mm-hmm. People would put whiskey into Michael J. Fox's drink on the set of Back to the Future.
Sure,
just so he'd do a spit take, and they could get. You just want to keep people loose. And right. I think that the open cubicles kept people loose. Then when I went to Disney and everybody was like in offices,
right,
close the door, mm-hmm. talk to their wife, it was a whole different experience. It was quiet. Mm-hmm. There weren't, remember Alan and the pages that would come over the PA system, and, "Oh, Jim, your haranguing wife is on line 3. It's a constant.
We had a guy. Okay, so what was his name? The
Alan Rayburn. Wait, no, that's Gene Rayburn.
Gene Rayburn. Yeah,
Alan. I forget his last name.
Okay, we had this guy that worked the switchboard, I guess, and he would make announcements and stuff like that. But anyway, think of Dr. Smith.
Very much so, and always hitting on you. I mean, that guy.
Yeah,
was always hitting on, but I never minded it because he was so funny.
Yeah,
he wasn't truly a creepy guy or anything.
No, I liked him. He was fun. He had a really good sense of humor.
Yes, and he was a professional radio guy. I mean, he had some radio gig back east at some point.
Right.
So he was good. He knew what he was doing, and he was very funny. And I remember one time we had the riots happen, and we all had to go home and work.
Right.
And I went down to get a bunch of those brush pens, because I had to do a bunch of work at home.
Sure.
And I said, "Alan, I'm going to raid your cabinet here for a second." "Oh, Mr. Ova, you raid that cabinet, and I'll raid your ass."
God.
Again, he was always that way, keeping everybody loose. It was great.
Yeah. He was very funny, and that's a perfect impression of him.
Phil Mosnes did a movie.
No.
With him. Yeah, we used to film it after work in the conference room where Alan is being really obnoxious and going overboard on trying to pick up this young artist, Phil Mosnes. And like, "Oh, your golden locks. Oh, and then he just went over the top. He's climbing on the table, all this stuff. It's really funny.
Right.
And then he wasn't
a young guy. He was not a young guy. He was
he's an older guy, and he got fired for
that.
Being funny. Yes. He made a comment to another gay artist on the elevator, just a joke.
Right.
one-line joke on the elevator, and the guy sued him. So he was gone, and anyway.
So So I'm trying to remember where we were. So we're still talking about Warner's, but
because when you go to Disney, it's a very different atmosphere. You know, people were kind of like, you're paid more at Disney. It's more prestigious. You get the passes.
Right.
It's all that stuff. But man, the environment was not fun.
Right.
In a big way. Now, I was lucky because I got in with Peter Hastings, and he had his own special deal with Michael Eisner.
Oh, wow.
He was going to develop his own kind of wraparound show for all because they were getting killed by Warner Brothers. And they said, we want this Warner Brothers feeling to our work. So they hired a handful of us from Warner Brothers. So me and Rich Ahrens went over, and a couple other people. It was just a handful of people. And he was doing, like you're talking about with Sesame Street. He did this thing where it would be live action bit, and then a short comedy bit, and then an anime bit, and then a this, that. So we were designing all this different stuff.
Right.
And that all got, that's where I got my second Emmy nomination.
What was the show? What was the show, or what was the wraparound?
That was for One Saturday Morning.
One Saturday Morning. Yeah. That was actually pretty big when that came out.
It was. It took them to number 1 because they had this wraparound that I thought that was Peter Hastings, who's brilliant. And that was a brilliant move on his part. That's where I met Prudence Fenton, who I still think the world of. She was a producer. She's a producer on that show. And she had previously done, she created Liquid Television.
Oh, yeah.
And she created Pee-wee's Playhouse. And she did the Peter Gabriel videos.
Sledgehammer.
In Sledgehammer.
Yeah.
So she came in, and she was like tough as nails. She was like this, tough talking broad, she's like, oh, come on, give me the shit. That's what she called the drawings. Give me the shit. And
really?
Look at it. Yes.
But
wow.
and some guys, Rich Ahrens never really liked it. Why is he calling it? Close the door. Why is he calling it shit? Working hard on that. But I totally got her. And she really helped me in a big way in that, like, let go of being precious with these drawings. You're just trying to find a vibe here, and let's throw out ideas.
Right.
And she was great at that.
Right.
And so I loved working with her and Peter over there.
Wow. Now, were people pursuing you, or were you actually just actively? Did someone like Peter Hastings call and say, "Hey, come on, let's go over there"?
In that case, he did. I wasn't really. I've never been good at, putting myself out there, go talk to everybody, get to. I was always just put my nose to the grindstone and do good work.
Right.
I think there's a real. What I learned was that can kill you. And we could get to that later, but I always just thought I'm just going to focus on the good work. So I didn't spend a lot of time, yakking up producers and getting friendly with people. But I was offered that, and I went, and then it was a great experience. And I worked with a lot of really great people over there. A lot of them who I'm friends with to this day. And again, it was a free kind of atmosphere, and we were sort of sheltered from that Disney crush.
Right.
And then when I went out,
we had on Bill Kopp. I talked with him yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
You know who he is?
Yeah.
So he was on yesterday, and I had freelanced on Schnookums and Meat. Schnookums and Meat, because I'm in the opening of that show.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's right.
I'm in the bathtub, and Schnookums and Meat come out of the bathtub while I'm bathing.
I remember. That.
So now everybody's going to be looking that up. It's in the title sequence, everyone. I'm not going to autograph any CDs or anything.
I got to say, there was so many drawings of you around the studio. You became a fun guy to draw and to put into these crazy situations.
I know.
That's fun.
I played everything. I was like the Mad Bomber. I was like a plumber. It was always okay. Can you work Mitchell into this? You got a character. Can you work Mitchell in? That's funny. Wow. Well, I guess that's a compliment.
It is.
Yeah.
look, in show business, things that make you memorable. That's the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at all these guys that became comics off of, Red Skelton show or whatever.
Right.
It's because they're memorable.
Yeah.
It's a great thing.
Well, they threw me, Chris Felucci threw me in Ren and Stimpy for an episode. And I think for the whole time, my character pops up and he goes, "I want a pretzel."
Yeah.
Or something like that. And it doesn't sound anything.
Priceless.
It doesn't sound anything like me. But
Yeah.
no. But it's.
That's how everybody imitated you, though. That was everybody go, which doesn't sound like you at all.
No, not at all. But yeah, it was always like the dumbbell character in these shows, So hello, folks, like that. And
you really get to see, those of you that aren't in animation, you really get to see who you are or how people perceive you based on how people draw you. Because like Alfred used to draw me in this, I was always like this guy with these vacant eyes, and I would always be like standing there. I remember it was the Gene McCurdy thing where we were playing hooky and we were at City Walk.
Yeah.
And we ran into Gene McCurdy there, and we were all running away from her.
Right.
And
we made a show about it, which didn't go anywhere.
That's right. And then Alfred did a drawing of you and me and Joey all running away from Gene McCurdy, and she's eating donuts or something, and we're all running away.
That's awful. That's really awful. It's funny. But
in the drawing, you guys are like running, and I'm this like vacant guy just getting like a little doll just getting bumped off. It was hilarious. And it's kind of true.
They kind of had you like the happy face.
Yeah.
With, the happy face with the smiley face with the body.
Yeah, Fisher always used to call me Smiling John.
Smiling John. There you go. Yeah. Paul Fisher. Whatever happened to him?
He was he was directing. He directed a feature over at DreamWorks.
Oh, what was that?
It was one of the
Croods?
No. He directed one of the Lego properties. Ninja Lego.
Yeah, everybody kind of went on to something else. I just kind of languished. I directed one show and a couple of short things, and that was it. But
I always thought that given the right property, it would be great to give you the reins on it. Just something that, because what's so funny is there was always this difference in your work that I always thought was interesting. You would be like really warm and sensitive in your drawings. Oftentimes, you did funny drawings and you did all that stuff.
Well, thank you.
But you often did like really thoughtful little things. You'd come in, you'd show me a drawing and say, "What do you think of that? I think it's kind of sweet, don't you? Don't you think that's sweet?" And you had a sweetness factor that you really liked.
I don't remember ever saying, "Isn't that kind of sweet?"
You used to do that. You used to come over and show me a drawing and go, "I think it's kind of sweet, this thing," because it was a sweet moment,
Oh.
And yet your prank stuff was always like just the opposite. It was like way off the top of it. It was very, very funny stuff.
Well,
that's the stuff I got hidden by the railroad tracks.
Or in the garbage can in the backyard.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
One of them was Charlton Heston in a compromising position.
Oh, yeah. John has this big thing for Charlton Heston and Roddy McDowall. And
I enjoyed their movies, and I used to do an impression of Heston and Roddy McDowall. And you know what's kind of funny?
What,
Brian? Right now, the couch in my living room is Charlton Heston's couch.
No,
that he bought after Ben-Hur, and he had all the way to his death.
Wow,
in his living. Yeah.
So did you go to his estate sale or?
No, a friend of mine, a writer friend. Mm-hmm. She lives out in Studio City, and she went to his estate sale, and she's a super lib, so she doesn't like Heston in any way.
Right.
But she bought everything in the estate sale. She bought his mugs, his chairs, his couches, his
guns.
Wife. No, she didn't touch the guns. So she calls me up and she says, hey, do you need a couch?
Right.
And I said, no, not really. And she goes, it's Charlton Heston's couch.
Okay.
Right. Oh, yeah, yes. So yeah, that's in my living room, and it's really kind of a unique couch, and you can see it. It's like a blue kind of arc thing, and if you look under Charlton Heston house, you'll see these pictures of his house, and there's the couch.
Wow.
And Brian, what I think that you might enjoy is I think about this couch, and I think, okay, so he bought that after Ben-Hur, so
right,
and he had it custom made for this room.
Right.
You think, okay, now he was friends with Ronald Reagan. He was friends with all the stars. They had parties at his house. Who sat on that couch? I mean, you think, did Frank Sinatra sit on that couch? Did Orson Welles, who was a friend, sit on that couch?
You have to excuse me because you know somebody's going to urinate on the couch eventually. So
Well, it's weird. It's weird because at the end of his life, you know, he had Alzheimer's and they had people for him. And so when I got the couch, you know, you go through it.
Yeah.
And I started finding stuff in the couch.
Wow.
That was really like, here's the price tag to a toy that he was buying his grandkid.
Oh.
And here's here, you know, from 1995 or something, like hidden down in. Right. I found all sorts of stuff.
Right.
That were little mementos from his life. And one of the sad ones was the business card to the lady that took care of him. And it said, you know, something like extreme Alzheimer or whatever. And that was her business card was there.
Wow.
It's just sad, but he might have sat on that couch reading Planet of the Apes, the script for that.
He might. You don't know.
It's amazing to think about.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
And you own it.
Yeah, there it is. People don't get it. Now people come over and you go, hey, you know whose couch that is? That's Charlton Heston. They go, who's that? And nobody knows who he is. So it's that
I know who he is.
Thing. You know who he is, but
you know, people.
The AT&T guy doesn't know.
You know, it's unbelievable to me that people are like living under a rock and they don't know any of this stuff. You know, especially about Charlton Heston is not. You know, it's not like. Oh God, I'm trying to think of some obscure Charles Lane. Right. Because if you go to you know who Charles Lane is, and they'll look at you like with you know, they'll know.
Or Peter Lawford, even somebody like that.
Peter Lawford, a little bit more, maybe a little bit more famous. He was a name, you know, or Van Johnson. Van Johnson. There you go.
Oh, okay, Van Johnson.
Van Johnson. I think he only had maybe 10 years of real fame, and then kind of
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I always used to get him and was that Forrest Tucker mixed up.
Forrest Tucker.
Yeah, I used to get those guys mixed up.
Oh. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Where were we?
It's I don't know. We were talking about the difference. Oh, and then after Disney, which was a great experience,
right.
I went over to Mike Young, which was a smaller studio.
Now, did he call you? Or did you just you heard something?
That was through my agent. You know, then by that time I had an agent,
right?
And because you know Tom tried to do well by me at Warner's, and I think at some point I got an agent, and then I was sent over to interview for this big show. It was going to be, you know, for Clifford, the Big Red Dog was a big property.
Yes,
and it was a big order. It was 60 episodes, and it was a big deal.
Right.
So, but it was a small studio I wasn't familiar with, and I'd never worked in a small studio.
Right.
And it was interesting because I was supervising director, so I wore a lot of hats. And suddenly, you know, at a cheaper studio, you don't have another department to do this, and you don't have a bunch of guys to do that. So you really were hands-on, and I learned a lot. And then Moochie Fassett designed those characters. He did such a great job.
Right.
And Charles Payne did the backgrounds for that. He designed a really unique look,
right,
that wasn't a part of the books. And the author of the books would Charles Bridwell would often say, "I can't draw for shit. I can't draw these characters," and he couldn't. Like the Emily Elizabeth changes from book to book.
Right.
And he goes, well, look at Clifford's mom. She's a different species, book to book. He said, or a different breed of dog.
Right.
And it's so we had to kind of design everything from scratch. The look of the thing had to feel like Clifford, but not be Clifford.
Right.
And that was a really tight rope to go. And Mucci, I think the simplicity of those characters was really key to that show's success.
Yeah, I think he did a great job.
Yes,
he really did a great job. Those characters look great.
Yeah, and again, we had a cheap animation studio in China to do it. And those were simple enough characters that you could really kind of learn. Mm-hmm. But you had to have that. It was like almost a Charles Schulz thing. There was a little squiggly line to it.
Yeah,
we weren't doing the solid thick Nickelodeon line. And so that'd be a lot of retakes, that line. And then Clifford was impossible to draw. Making that guy 3-dimensional, and turn his head and stuff was just really difficult.
Right.
And there was one guy at the studio that could draw him, and so Mucci didn't even draw Clifford. It was this guy, that KB that passed away sadly, but he was the only guy that could draw him, and so he was like the designated Clifford guy. So
right.
All the promotional work, if you Googled Clifford the Big Red Dog, right now, all that work you see is his.
Wow.
Great job.
Yeah, no, it was really well done. I mean, right down from the stories to, I mean, my daughter used to watch those. She used to love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of my best moments in animation was on that show. We did this episode, and this, you always get these sort of, this is a sensitive episode.
Oh boy.
So this sensitive episode was about a 3-legged dog that comes to the island, and the other dogs don't want to get near him because they think they'll get a 3-legged disease and their legs will fall off and all this stuff.
Right.
So it's a little investigation into people that have something different.
Yeah.
And we did the episode but we didn't really. We kind of, in the back of our minds, we're like, oh, it's another one of these special episodes, and you get a lot of that. And then we got a letter from this mom that was amazing, and it said, my son has one arm, and his life was pretty awful. He would go to school, and everybody would avoid him. He had no friends.
Yeah,
and he was doing terribly. He would cry every morning not to go to school.
Wow.
And she just poured out all this pain about this poor kid's life and his isolation. And then she said, then the teacher showed that episode of Clifford, and the whole classroom got up and walked over and hugged him.
Wow.
It always chokes me up. It's just amazing. And she said that changed his life. She said he had friends after that.
Right.
He got involved in the class. He did all stuff. She said it completely changed the course of his life. An episode of Clifford.
Yeah.
So you don't, in animation, unlike a play or something, or even, a YouTube video, you don't get any feedback instantly. Shows go out, your whole, Wacko's World thing, Yakko's World, you don't hear back until years later when people have seen this thing. So it's always something to get a letter and actually hear how a show impacts somebody.
Yeah, it does. I worked on Spooktacular Adventure. No, it was Casper, the Spooktacular Adventures of the World's Friendliest Ghost. I think that's the title.
That's a heck of a title.
No, it's not that. It's the Spooktacular Adventures of Casper. But I worked on that show, and I didn't really think too much of that show working on it. I was just kind of just doing my thing, having fun. Mm-hmm. And the animation was awful. I mean, it was sent to, I don't know, somewhere in the sticks. And they, and, they couldn't keep the character design down. It was just horrible. But, what I feel and what other people see and what they experience is a whole other thing. Yeah. And I got an email from somebody because they knew they knew I worked on pretty much all those, not all of them, but I worked on a lot of those episodes as a storyboard guy. And it was like how that show helped her get through her childhood years because there was a lot of loneliness. And you don't think about this stuff. You're thinking about, you're just thinking about putting together a good show, and you're hoping that it entertains somebody, but you're not really thinking how that's going to affect somebody's life. So, it's like that show that you're talking about, the three-legged dog. Mm-hmm. It's like, how kids relate to it and it means something.
Yeah,
so,
it does.
So if you do one show like that in your life and you affect the life of one person, I guess it's really worth it, right?
Well, it's funny because I also had the opposite end of that. I lived downtown for like 14 years in a high rise, and they would make us breakfast on the weekends. And you would sit, and they had this big screen TV, and you'd sit by the pool and eat breakfast. And they would show Pinky and the Brain and stuff like that. And this one episode I really worked hard on. I mean, I posed the hell out of that board.
Right.
And here it was. They're showing this episode. And I'm watching all these kids. There's a bunch of kids in the room, and they're all watching it.
Right.
So I'm sitting there eating my scrambled eggs, watching this. And they weren't even watching the screen. They're just wrestling, and they're talking. And then they look at the screen, and then they go back, and then they talk. And I'm thinking, this is how kids.
Yeah.
They're not really watching. Oh, watch how he holds up his hand and he slowly curls his fingers. Oh, they're going to love that. It was just like.
I found that. Kids will watch cartoons. They'll, if they're with their mom or whatever, or maybe a friend, they might actually, and it really has to be kind of a darkened room so that the only focus is at TV, and they might actually focus on it. But I think as kids get older, I think when they hit 7 and they're watching this stuff, I think they really start to take notice, And it's like Animaniacs and Tiny Toon Adventures really appealed more to like a young adult audience and college students.
No doubt. And Pinky and the Brain. And
yeah, all that stuff. So,
now you run into people that are like, 35, 40 years old. And they're, I used to always watch.
Yeah.
Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah. I've ran into a bunch of people like that. Oh yeah, I love that show. And they're like, they're cause I'm an old geezer now.
Yeah. Yeah. We're old. Jesus.
Yeah. I'm just fighting off senility. Fight.
I know. I always put my wallet somewhere. I never know where it is.
Yeah. I
never know where it is.
I say I can't remember a thing, and then I come up with these obscure names. And people are like, how do you know that?
Okay, that is weird.
Yeah.
That's not right. You should not know the names. That's something that's never been stuck with me as names.
Really?
But here's where I'd like to encourage the people that are listening. Smaller studios are great because you really get to
wear a lot of hats,
do things that you wouldn't get to do before.
Yeah.
You get to like write copy. I would write copy for the show when we were selling it. I would just at one point, one of the shows I did a number of shows with them, but one of them was just a guy from Ireland coming in with he had like $50 million or $30 million, something. He said, I want to create a show. So it was him and I sitting in an office, and I'm trying to get like stuff about his life growing up in Ireland.
Right.
And you didn't get that at Warner Brothers. It was like, okay, here's the script.
Right.
Here's the thing. Unless you're on the development team, you really didn't get that. So I really loved developing out shows at Warner's. And then I really got that came in handy later on when opportunities would just walk in the door and you'd go and develop shows.
Right. So a guy just walked in off the street. I want to do a show about myself.
No, he wanted to do a show for Ireland. He was a rich guy. He was like the richest man in Ireland. And he said, I want to give something back to Ireland.
Oh, okay.
And so he came in the office, and he ended up being a great partner. He was really very generous with budgets and stuff. We didn't have a big budget, but he was very consistent about the money, and
wow,
it's great.
Because
that show won a ton of awards. He was we won a BAFTA on that, And
What was the name? What was the name of the show?
That was called Jakers.
Oh, okay. That ran here.
Yeah, we had Mel Brooks was in it, and
wow,
it's funny.
Were you directing Mel Brooks?
Yes, I was directing Mel Brooks. But it's funny. I had the greatest voice director in the world, Kelly Ward.
Kelly Ward,
fantastic.
What is that name? That name
Kelly
sounds
Ward
familiar.
Is a fantastic. He's not only a great voice director, he's also a great writer. He'd be a great guy to have on, actually.
Right.
He started as an actor. He's one of the guys in John Travolta's group in Grease.
Oh, okay.
And he was with Lee Marvin in The Big Red One.
Okay.
And then he started writing for animation and then voice directing. And he's great because he's a real actor, so he really knew how to speak to actors.
Right.
And that's a special talent.
Yeah.
And it's a special thing to animation because in animation, like here's the thing with Mel Brooks, who is wonderful, by the way, and very funny. And he would say, "Oh, do you want?" Anne Bancroft would call the studio,
right,
and say, "Where's the prick?" And then they were very funny together. And then you put him on,
right?
He'd say, "Okay, let me find him." Yeah, you go find the prick. And then she put him on, and then he'd go, "Yes, dear. Yes, dear. I'll get toilet paper. Yes, yes. Oh, spaghetti sauce. Yes." He was very funny, and he was full of stories about all that first days in television and stuff.
Yeah, in New York.
Yeah, but in animation, it's weird because you're working with the story long before the voice actors ever see it.
Right.
And so you boarded this thing out. You know exactly how many times that sheep bounces going down the hill, and you know exactly how you want them to end up at the bottom of the hill.
Right.
So you'd say, "Okay, Mel, you're gonna go down the hill. It's gonna be oh, 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 ow." And then that's the
Would you do his voice? Would you actually say that to him?
Yeah.
In his voice?
And then he'd say, "Oh, oh, oh, ow is not funny, John. Oh, oh, ooh is funny." And I'd say, "Well, okay, you do it that way, but I need to get ooh, 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 ow, because that's what we boarded out. It's not funny. I'll tell you now, that's not funny." So then I'd say, "Okay, just do one for yourself and then do one for me." So he'd do his ooh, 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 ow. And then, "Okay, this one's for you. Ooh, 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 ow. It's not funny." You'd have to put that in. But he was great. He was
so let me guess which one you used.
I used his.
Of course.
And at that time, he had not done animation before.
Right.
So it was...
no, that's not true.
For the old man.
Yes.
He did the animated 100-year-old man.
That's right.
But
that's right.
He had not done any shows. Now he's on a lot of things, but he had not done that. And then Mike, this is something Mike was really good at. We were in New York, Mike and I, and Liz, his wife, we were watching The Producers on Broadway.
Yeah.
And Mel Brooks has one line in that, and it's a recording that just happens at one point near the end of the play.
Right.
There's a guy that says something like, "No, but let's try that again," or something like that from off stage.
Right.
And it's Mel.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike turned to me and said, "Let's get Mel to do a voice for our show." Because we were looking for a voice for the sheep.
Right.
And somehow he got Mel Brooks to do that voice.
Amazing.
And we were talking with Richard Harris's agent about him doing a voice. He had promised at one point he would, and he couldn't because he was doing this little thing called Harry Potter.
Just a little thing.
Yeah. But we ended up getting Brendan Gleeson and a bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very satisfying show because that was something that I was designing, I was directing, and I was doing pretty much everything from an initial concept with the writers.
Didn't you have producer credit on that show too?
Yeah, I did. So
was it associate? Not associate. It was like what?
No, I was a producer on. I was.
Okay. You're one of the. And
it was a creative producer. It was a creative producer.
Right.
Thing. And then I got a special achievement Emmy for production design,
cool.
Which was really satisfying because I wanted to do something very different at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I went out to Ireland and I lived on a farm in Wales, and I took hundreds and hundreds of photographs of textures and all this stuff. And at that time, that was like a Jimmy Neutron era. A lot of 3D animation, which was kind of new at that time in television, was very low on texture. There wasn't a lot of mapping going on. You weren't doing a lot of that.
Right.
But I really wanted to do the hell out of that. So let's make this feel like a painting.
Mm-hmm.
And then that'll add a richness to this 3D work. So we found the right studio in India to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And being out at these weird pubs and stuff in Ireland, and I spent a couple of weeks out in Ireland and came back with, this is how it feels in one of these places. And it kind of came through. It was great. And I worked with a lot of talented people, one of them being my wife.
Right.
Ellen
Jin.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and Steve Lowry did some great paintings, and Michael Lowry, what am I saying? Michael Lowry and Cedric was instrumental in getting that sort of 3D look to the paintings, which wasn't there before.
Right.
But at that time, people were just starting that Photoshop mashing stuff that they do now everywhere. But at that time, people weren't doing it.
Right.
So that was fun. And I even wrote for the season finale, for the series finale, I wrote a 12-page outline that had a bunch of dialogue and stuff. And then that script got nominated for an Annie Award, which was great.
Wow.
So
really nice.
It was really great. So we won all kinds of awards on that show, and best animated series twice. And
right.
So that was really great. And then after that, it was there's a whole other chapter of my life, which deals with us having kids. And that was something I never wanted. Ellen never wanted.
Right.
We were career people. We weren't about kids, but we had kids, and I didn't want to be that guy that comes home at 11 o'clock and doesn't know his kids.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing. I was always coming home super late.
Right.
And it turns out I'm really great with kids. And when you have those lives, in your hands, and they were premature. They were twins. They were twins. I took time off to be with them, and that's the greatest thing I ever did.
Yeah.
It was the greatest period of my life, and it changed me in a big way. It changed and I was doing a lot externally, but internally I had a lot of walls up to people.
Yeah.
And this changed that in a big way. I ended up learning how to really bond with someone, and that's been a big kind of important thing for me from that point on going forward. So it changed all my relationships. It was really a great thing.
That's interesting, because I'm probably not going to put this in the show. I'll probably take this out, because it's something I noticed about you. Like, you would get friendly and you would get close, and then you'd kind of pull away.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did all the time. No, you don't have to cut that out. That was very true.
Yeah.
And it showed me that you can have all this success. I mean, I was like winning Emmys and traveling the world and going to India and China and the Bahamas, and I was living this life, but I couldn't really connect to people.
Yeah.
I could entertain people. Mm-hmm. I could be funny and all that, what you're describing. I would do that.
Yeah.
And then when it started to get intimate and people started to like, well, no, seriously, John.
Right.
Then it was like Robin Williams being interviewed or something. Not that I'm on that scale at all, but he could never really bond with people. People would always say. And I had the same thing. And the world gets claustrophobic because it doesn't matter how much success you have. And I was making great money. Life gets kind of flavorless. Mm-hmm. And you're not bonding to people. And that's what being with the kids took me in a whole different direction. And after that, to be close to the kids, I took a job teaching up the street at one of the best high schools in the country, actually, is Clark Magnet, right up the street.
Right. And
it's a high school. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to build an animation program there. And so I went up there, and that was truly the greatest experience I ever had.
Rewarding.
Because,
yes,
you're students are coming up, they're sharing their life with you, you're getting to know parents. Mm-hmm. There's something more important than making that pig go up the stair in a funny way. This is somebody's life.
Right.
You know, they're saying, hey, I want to know, should I go into this or should I go into that? And it's funny because I had so many relationships forged at that point that I still have today. I still see them all the time, a bunch of these students. So that was that's kind of the way my life went. So now I'm getting kind of back into that.
Right.
And so Ellen and I formed a company, and we just signed a contract with an overseas studio. We're working on a series that we created.
Very good.
We're doing a pilot for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing some boards for Nickelodeon and Titmouse and stuff like that.
Right.
But again, it goes right back for me. It's not about that. It goes right back to that thing we were talking about with Jim Henson. Like, what are you really saying with these shows? So now I have this sort of life experience, and the things that I write and the things that I conceive have a depth that they didn't have before. Maybe my concept was right, but the depth of it wasn't. So now that's there. So that's kind of cool.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I'm not going to ask you what you're working on now. I'm sure that'll be revealed if it takes off.
Yes, I can't say. But,
you cannot say. Your lips are...
Which is a weird thing. You know, it's always hard. You know, when you work on some show, like over at DreamWorks, they'll say, "Oh, you can't take any copies of this stuff home."
Right.
And then you want to show that around. You can't for years after. And I always saw these guys making all these copies late at night, you know, running stuff and, you know, off of Storyboard Pro, they're printing out boards and stuff. And I always thought, no, but they say don't do that. And they'd always go, yeah. Just do it. I know why now, because you don't get it. You just don't get it back.
Right.
So.
Well, you know, I think the thing is too, you know, when you're going to different studios and they want to see your work, they want to see your most recent work. They don't want to see something you did 5-10 years ago.
No, it's absolutely true.
Yeah. So it's like you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's like, well, I worked on this. It's like, well, yeah, can you show us some stuff? And it's like, well, no, I signed no, it's a thing.
It's tough. So that's why you get these guys, you know, midnight at the copy machine.
That's right. Just copying the stuff. What are you copying over there? My hand? I don't know.
Yeah. It's a different Kung Fu Panda poses. I just love them. Boss Baby. I'm doing Boss Baby over here. That's all right. Well, anything else?
I don't know.
I'm looking at it's 6:11, and
I'm looking at the clock here, and it's like 12 midnight. So.
Oh my God! Well, why don't we wrap it up?
We should do that, shouldn't we?
All right.
Oh God! So, hey, look, John, this was fun.
Yeah, very fun.
This was
always fun to talk to. Always fun.
Hey, well, no, you got some good stories, and you know, you have any advice for the kiddies out there? Like, you know, don't play with matches or something. I don't know. Yeah, there's this one story I tell. I once had somebody come to my office with a bunch of portfolio pieces. There's a mom and a daughter. She was about 15 or something. Right. Maybe 16. They're going to put her into art center. They're going to try to get her into Cal Arts. They're going to, and so I said, well, okay, so tell me, what are you doing? Oh, I love animation. I just love animation. I want to be part of it. So I've been taking all these classes, and the mother's going, yeah, it's so expensive. All these classes she's been taking. So here's the portfolio, and I look at it, and Brian, it's terrible. Yeah, it's absolutely awful. Yep. And I'm thinking this girl doesn't have a chance. And it's a big deal for me. I always am honest about artwork. I never tell somebody something's good if it's not. Right. And it's funny, like Ellen and I could be in the biggest fight in the world, but if she's got a nice piece of art on the computer, I'll have to say, that's a beautiful painting. That's really great. I never. Ooh, that's very nice.
And look, some of these art colleges, I'll say, can really waste your life. Yeah. So I said to her, well, tell me what you like about animation. And she goes, well, I just love the stories. I love this story and that story. And all the references she gave were all storylines. Right. And I said, well, you know, you don't have to be an artist to be in animation. You can actually be a writer in animation. And Brian, it's like the Rock of Gibraltar was lifted off her shoulders. She goes, no. Yeah, you don't have to draw. She goes, I hate to draw. And then she goes, you mean I can just write these? Yes, you can write.
Wow.
And then so she goes, well, wow, that's what I'm gonna do. So it's to people that are like getting into animation, I'd say first figure out what you like about animation. Is it the stories, or is it the way a character moves? Because that's like an animator. Is it how the story is sort of told? That's sort of a storyboard artist, like the angles that you're using or the use of the camera, things like that.
Or do you like to do voices?
Or do you like to do voices? Exactly.
Are you good at it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's understanding what you like to do, because once you get into it, it's a lot of competition and it's a lot of repetition. You're going to be doing the same thing again and again and again and again.
Yep.
Especially if you're good at it. They go, okay, this guy's good at that. And so you're going to do a lot of that. So you have to like it. So if there's something in animation you're doing that you don't really like, don't focus on that. Now, people go, oh, I don't like perspective. Well, some things you got to learn. You got to learn to draw in volume. You got to learn perspective.
Right.
But as far as your focus in animation, understand what it is that really rings your bell. And if you're in college, find people that will be honest with you about your work. I was teaching out at Northridge, and this guy would always come in my class. He wasn't in my class. He'd always come in and show me his work. And I always said, why do you always come in and show me your work? You have a great professor. And he goes, you know what? She always tells me everything's perfect. She always tells me everything's great. I'm so good.
Right.
He said, but you show me what's wrong with it. And so he later came in at the very end. He was all distraught. And I said, what happened? He goes, man, I wasted 4 years of my life. He said, I've been told for 4 years that I'm great. And when I show this to his studios, they're going to go nuts. They're going to hire me that day. He said, I just got back from DreamWorks. They looked at my portfolio and they laughed. He said, they didn't mean to, but they laughed. And they said, dude, you are way off.
Right.
He said, I've just spent 4 years of my parents' money.
Yeah.
He was distraught. He had no idea what to do. So you always want to find people that will be honest with you about your artwork and not just go, oh, yeah, it's great. Oh, so funny.
Right.
Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. And so you got to know what's not working.
Yeah, I think the other key too is like, there's that Preston Blair book.
Great book.
It's a great book. And, people they'd show me drawings. What do you think of this? And do you think this is professional caliber? And then I would just pull out that book and I'd open up a page and I'd put the drawing next to that drawing. And I said,
oh, that's great.
This is where you need to be. You got to get that confidence aligned. You got to know these shapes. You got to know how to anchor the stuff. And when you get it to the point where it's not a tracing of that, where you could do that freehand, then you're good to go.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, a lot of people don't realize that. Some people can't see it. You show them the book and they'll say, no, it looks exactly the same. It's like,
yeah, they don't.
Yeah. And if you can't tell the difference, then you shouldn't be doing it. So, yeah. But anyway, hey, John, you are a tremendous talent, man. I've always thought you're a tremendous talent. And,
no, you too, man.
And and the one thing I do want to say, and I've said this on a few other shows, is most people that are in animation, they can do voices. Just because I don't know what it is about animators or people working in animation, but this guy, Jerry Reese, that we had on recently, he could do a perfect Walter Cronkite. He could do a perfect Robin Williams, and he worked with both of them. Oh, wow. And so he did a scratch track, and they couldn't tell the difference. I said, why don't you just do it, Yeah. So, you're doing like Mel Brooks, and you're doing, Charlton Heston, and you can do Roddy McDowell, and you can do all these different voices, and it's amazing because you're really good at it. But you're you're multi-talented.
Well, it's funny because I one of the shows I worked with was a Pink Panther show with Artley and Artie.
Yes.
Later on, they were written. Cartoon Network was going to do one, and I got pulled into this Anthony Aardvark because they had wasted like a year and a half or something making these horrible things, and they were just awful. And they said, hey, can you fix this? So I came in, I recast it, and I designed it, and I rewrote 13 scripts, and I was looking for who's going to do this voice, because they had a guy doing the aardvark,
right?
That was like this. So what are you gonna do? It's just really awful,
right?
And everybody in town tried out for that. We did everybody in town, and nobody had it right.
Yeah.
So then I was doing the scratch track.
Yeah.
I'm kind of doing it like this. And I'm doing, no, he's not going to get there because he's going the other way around. I was doing that. And then I go, that's it. So I ended up doing the voice.
Wow.
The aardvark.
Yeah.
And it was so weird being on the other end of the microphone. It was a lot harder.
Yeah.
To be there. You get kind of, especially, and now I understand, they always say voice actors don't to give the line. Don't tell him, say it tomorrow, just let the guy find it.
Right.
And say, hey, maybe a little more happy, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I totally get that now, because once you start getting into that, what? Tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow. Okay. And then you're waiting for your next line like that, and you lose the character. It's really weird. It's funny.
Who ended up doing the ant for that?
Okay, that's a fun story, because there was this guy that was, this guy was trying to do like a Dean Martin black thing. It just didn't work. It was like, hey, let's get over there. It was like awful.
Right.
So I called up Kel Mitchell, who did T-Bone for us on Clifford.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this kind of, Kel Mitchell was doing Keenan and Kel at that time.
Right.
And
Keenan
he just kind of had this whole thing. Hey, man, what's up? It's kind of, he sounded just like Kevin Hart.
Right.
And before Kevin Hart. So I thought that's the vibe, is this guy, hey, man, what are you doing over there? No, come over here. And so he came in and just killed it. It was great.
Wow.
It was perfect.
Wow.
It's really great to work with.
There you go.
T-Bone was always everybody's instant favorite. And a lot of that was the voice.
Right. I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, pretty cool. Well, John, you're a massive talent. Keep going.
Oh, man, you are too. Thanks. Going. You made my years at Warner Brothers so much fun. You really did.
Well,
and
good.
That's a lot of people.
I'm glad I entertained somebody.
Yeah.
All right, John.
Do you have any questions or comments about the podcast? Please email Brian at cartoonerific.com. Your email may be featured in one of our future shows.
Well, that was a fun interview. Thank you, John Over, for spending some time with us and doing that interview. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. And believe me, I got a lot out of it. There are a lot of things I never knew before, believe it or not. And that's part of the fun of me doing these interviews. But I hope you picked up on that. And we wish John all the best for his future endeavors. Well, the neighbor next door just started pounding on the wall, and you know what that means? It means it's time to go. That's right. Anyway, next week on the Cartoonerific podcast, our special guest will be Mr. Rick Goldschmidt, and it will be our Christmas show featuring Rick talking about all the classic Christmas holiday specials. So we'll be covering Rudolph, of course, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Little Drummer Boy, Frosty the Snowman, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, whole bunch of others too. So please come back for that. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Go to your favorite service, hit that subscribe button so the next time a delicious Cartoonerific podcast is out, it will be delivered right to your front door, hot and ready. There you go. Anyway, the company store is now online. You can access that and the animation art gallery through cartoonerific.com. Cartoonerific.com. Anyway, I want everybody to have a great day. I want you to have an excellent week. And once again, thank you for tuning in.
This has been a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
The Cartoonerific podcast is copyright 2024 by Cartoonerific Studios Incorporated. All rights reserved.